job offer. I am good friends with the person who's like his right-hand person, and they're always looking for people. So, you know, if you're interested, I can at least connect you. They're in Oak. I think they're in Oakland, but he does a lot of public advocacy and civil rights stuff. So I'm really slaughtering his reputation right now because I can't speak to what exactly he does, but it's amazing. But
I'll look at what he does. It sounds really interesting. I'm definitely looking for an internship at the moment, so I'd love to.
I could at least give you her name and I'll let her know about you. See where it goes. Yeah.
Awesome. I should probably put my phone on.
Oh yeah.
I have permission.
Okay, we're going to reconvene into open session, the regular meeting of the Albany Unified School District Board of Education for Tuesday, September 11th, 2018. May we have a roll call, please?
President Black,
Here.
Vice President Stapleton Gray,
Here.
Board Member Blanchard,
Here.
Board Member Clark,
Here.
Board Member Chutain,
Here.
Student Board Member Weinstein,
Here.
Student Board Member Mala.
Here.
Okay, before we do anything else, considering that this is September 11th, I think we'll just have a moment of silence in memory of all those who have paid a sacrifice because of man's inability to get along with man. Okay, thank you. Now, for those who wish to participate, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. Reading of the AUSD mission and vision statement.
The mission of Albany Unified School District is to provide excellent public education that empowers all to achieve their fullest potential as productive citizens.
AUSD is committed to creating comprehensive learning opportunities in a safe, supportive, and collaborative environment, addressing the individual needs of each student.
Thank you. In closed session, the board completed its evaluation of the superintendent and has decided to maintain her current contract. Board members have met individually with the superintendent and have discussed with the superintendent areas of strength and areas in which they desire improvement. Next is the approval of the agenda. Anyone have any changes or comments on the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next is the consent calendar. Item 3F in the consent calendar, I think was put in by mistake. Is that right? It's a repeat of another item.
That is correct.
So we're just going to strike item 3F. Are there any other questions, comments, items to pull for the consent? And with the understanding that we're striking 3F, do we have a motion on the consent calendar?
I move we approve the consent calendar.
I second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Board and Superintendent Report.
Thank you, President Black. Trustees, just a couple of things to report. I'm going to start off with the fact that this Friday there is a football game at Dianza. And so if you're a football fan, we encourage you to come out and support our football team, but also to look at the other sports that are being played throughout the year and attend as many as you possibly can. Our students do a great job as teams and sometimes individually in their sports. And so I will be at this Friday's game. I'm looking forward to it. Monday, just a quick reminder, is the Albany Education Foundation New Teacher Gathering at Little Star Pete's at 4 o'clock. I encourage all new teachers to attend. The Albany Ed Foundation does a wonderful job welcoming our new teachers every year. And finally, this week I'm going to be at the City Parks and Recreation Committee meeting. We've been working with the city as we build our Albany Middle School annex to really look at traffic as well as look at the trees to make sure that that we continue to help Albany keep having trees, that we don't just cut trees down, but that we replant what needs to be removed. Thank you.
Thanks. We had the Solano Stroll this Sunday. AUSD had a booth.
Sorry, thank you. Yes, we did have the booth. And actually, I got quite a few positive comments about the Solano Stroll. Many people came up and looked at the big pictures that we had of the middle school annex and had a lot of questions. But they were also very impressed with the information we had on our academic scores. And so I got a lot of positive comments about that, and several people took flyers away with them. So this is the second year that we've done the Solano Stroll, and we'll continue to do so.
Thanks. And I'll note that I stopped to hear the Albany High Jazz Band. Michaela was there. And even though they only had a couple of weeks to rehearse, they were wonderful. And every year they're new kids, and every year they're wonderful, which speaks worlds to the teaching and the music department, that they're able to bring these kids up to such a high standard so quickly. It was really fun to see them. Anyone else want to comment?
So I think some congratulations are in order to Michaela. I just saw a little story in the patch about you. Would you like to say anything more about that?
Yeah, it was definitely a really big honor. I received a award from the Dillerteen Tikkun Olam Award, and it's a $36,000 scholarship that's awarded to 15 teens around the nation annually. That they're looking to expand it internationally in the next coming years. But it was definitely an honor to receive it and also be able to meet so many other amazing young leaders. And it definitely gives me hope that there's a lot of really great energy out there and a lot of really great leadership and ideas that are going to be blooming soon. So it connected me to a lot of really amazing people, which was awesome.
Congratulations.
So
Yeah,
congratulations, and specifically they cited your work in helping organize Speak. So thank you so much for that work, and congratulations.
Anyone else? Yep.
I want to mention things happening in Sacramento. So on August 31st, the Assembly passed the Healthy School Hours Bill, which mandates an 8:30 a.m. start time for secondary schools across the state. There are many exceptions for rural districts and small districts that might have trouble with bus schedules and that sort of thing, but it basically for districts such as ours would mandate an 8:30 a.m. start time. Even though the Assembly passed it, it is still waiting for a signature by the governor, and I think he has about 10 more days to sign that bill. We've talked about later morning start times here in Albany for a lot of years now, ever since we started working with the Challenge Success Program in Palo Alto at Stanford about reducing student stress and getting better learning and health outcomes for our students. So I am thinking that, whether the governor signs this or not, if he doesn't sign this, it won't become law. But I think that the district needs to start considering an implementation process. It takes some years of planning to get to an 8:30 start time. And lastly, I'll just mention that the bill itself includes some years of implementation and wouldn't begin the 8:30 start time until the 2021 school year, I believe.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just wanted to add something to that real quick. I'm actually on the Wellness Committee with Kim, and I want to thank her and all the other people who are on the committee who've actually been working towards this. So like she said, if it actually doesn't pass up in Sacramento, hopefully we can continue that work. We're getting close, and that was one of the reasons when we picked the committees last week, or last board meeting, that I wanted to stay on. That was one of the main reasons, and just thank you, everybody. Looking at you, you're there too. But for everyone who's been taking their time out to work on this important issue.
Thanks. Okay, student board member report.
At Marin School these past 2 weeks, there was a lot of, people going back to school, and I personally heard from my sister that it was really wonderful. But in the next 2 weeks, on Friday, September 14th, Marin Elementary will host an international potluck. Bring a dish of your choice and celebrate the start of the school year with the Marin community. Marin also had their first monthly Marin Morning on September 5th. Students, parents, and faculty members sang songs and enjoyed the community time in the crisp early morning. At Cornell Elementary will have a PTA ice cream social on Friday, September 21st, and a work party the following day on September 22nd. Parents, students, and community members are all welcome. Back to School Night will be hosted at Cornell on Thursday, September 13th. Back to School Night will be hosted at Ocean View on September 13th, and a teacher and staff appreciation potluck will also be held on that day. An ice cream social will be taking place on September 22nd for Ocean View.
For Albany Middle School, Back to School Night will be hosted on September 20th, and the Albany Middle School PTA meeting will be on the same night. The AMS Fall Sports Parent Meeting will be tomorrow, September 12th, and fall sports will begin soon after. For Albany High School, tomorrow, September 12th, students will attend Club Rush at lunch and explore the student-ran clubs of Albany High. And Back to School Night will also be on September 12th at 7 p.m.
Thank you. Any comments or questions for the students? Okay, moving on. Persons to address the board on matters not on the agenda. Anyone here to address the board on matters that are not on the agenda? Okay. And we'll move on to our first staff report, which is on the 2018 summer school.
Thank you, President Black, trustees. I'm going to turn this item over to our summer school principal, who is also our Cornell principal, Heather Duncan.
Thank you. So I think that everybody had, an opportunity to look a little bit over the report that I wrote for summer school. So I'm just going to try to summarize. Summer school is held for credit recovery students in high school in English and social studies. Essentially, it's English 1, 2, and 3, and world history and U.S. history. And then we also hold an extended school year program for TK through adult in special education. So the program ran very similarly to last year, although this year, and if you were paying attention a couple of years ago, you'll recall that when Melissa Poole was the principal, just for 1 year, we did an ELD, or English Language Development Bridge program for students in 5th grade going on to 6th. And last year, for various reasons, we weren't able to have that class, but we worked to rekindle the class and program this year. And one of the reasons that we did find that it was more successful this year was we added graduating 4th graders in. So we had a 4-5 bridge program, which enabled us to fill the class, and we just put some extra adult support in there to help the teacher, and it was really successful, and I was really happy with how it went. I think in addition to that, One of the reasons it was successful was I started, once I knew I was going to be a summer school principal in about January, and I would recommend the same for any future principal and/or the elementary principals could do it if it was an outside of district person hired as summer school principal. But we began meeting with the English language development teachers in January and had some intermittent meetings with Marie and with us, and got the program sort of in place in terms of curriculum, who we would invite, and they were invaluable in getting the class underway. Not to mention, it was super fun for the kids. And I just kind of tucked them away at a different spot on campus, so they really hardly ever came into contact with the big kids, the big kids being your age. I kind of sheltered them off in one spot and gave them their own recess, so it felt like they were always just at elementary school. We had the same level of programming in terms of all of the other programs, in that we had 3 classes for the high school, and then the ESY classes were broken up into, I think, K2, 3-5, 6-8, and high school and adult. And then we always have an hourly program for kiddos that may just need an hour of speech or occupational therapy or just a reading hour. So those kids come in and out throughout the day. So the program runs for 4 weeks. It runs all day. It starts at 8:30 and ends at about 3. And it's just me and the school secretary, although I would say the last handful of years, not just mine, we've managed to always have somebody that is getting their administrative credential that wants to do some intern time and get hours towards their program, and that has really enabled the summer school program to thrive because we have an extra grown-up on campus that's helping us with some of the support that's needed for kids. I think outside of not going over all the numbers here, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I sort of just want to go to the summary and some of the potential next steps that I've put in at the end. I want to revisit the fact that last year I suggested that Cornell be a continuing spot for summer school. I think for various reasons, if you talk to the principals at all the sites, we've all sort of narrowed in on why we feel Cornell is a good spot for summer school. And I'm happy to answer questions about that. But for one, it enables us to kind of keep the kids corralled in one location. It gives them some playtime. Some of the other schools don't always allow for that, either because of supervision difficulties or because the secondary schools just really don't have what I would call a recess space. And believe it or not, the high school kids, while they kind of pretend like they don't want to have time to play in between. When I put out the equipment and the basketballs and they have nothing else to do, pretty soon there's a pickup game of basketball and I'm able to stand out there and hang out with them. And I have personally, as an anecdote, had so much fun with the high school kids. They're just kind of like kindergartners, but they're taller and smarter, and they're funny, just like kindergarten. So, I mean, kids are no different, I think, except that they just get a little bit different in their needs. So I've had a lot of fun with that. I will say there were a couple of concerns, and when I say a couple, I mean a couple means 2, from community members saying, there was some historical agreement that the rotation of facilities would occur with summer school so that you don't take away our little local park for the kids during the summer. So I think that's something to think about. However, even with those couple of folks, I happen to know who they are. One was a grandma and one was a parent, and I think when I explained it to them, they understood. It's just that we have so little space for kids to play in the summer that when we lock the campus up for the whole day, which we essentially do, nobody can use the playground during that time. So that's something that you should know about. But I still would advocate for it being at Cornell, even if it's not me that's the principal, because there could be a rumor that, well, we did it there because Heather was the principal. And yes, it's convenient, but there was more than that happening, right? We did it before I was the principal there. I think Darren McNally was there one time as principal, and that was kind of what gave us the idea that it was a good spot. Another thing that really helped this year, and I think this is just because I did it 2 years in a row, but I worked really closely with the counseling staff at Albany High to get the kids enrolled and communicate to them, and Alexia was very helpful. I think having Ms. Ritchie as having been an elementary principal and now in secondary, she understands some of the nuance around getting messages out, and we were able to recruit kids a little bit more easily. And then right before the program began, I was able to go over and meet with the counselors and have them give me some of the important little details about kids that I might need to know, that I could either choose to or not choose to relay to teachers depending on what was personal, but I was sort of holding on to that in the way that I could be helpful, and I'm mostly talking about high school kids. As Diane Marie and I work closely on supporting all the kids that have special needs. And again, like I said, I really recommend keeping the Summer Bridge program. I said this last year, and I'll say it again. I really feel like one of the little gaps in summer school is that we have all these high school kids that are in credit recovery, and I think something to realize and bring to the surface about high school kids that are taking credit recovery, because I would have been one of those kids that barely made it through high school, and I think one of the things that's a little bit tricky is there's just me and maybe an intern, or the principal and maybe an intern, and these are the kids in high school and the highest level of students with special needs. They need more support than we give them in summer, and especially counseling support, right? In high school and in middle school, there's a counselor on staff, but I essentially become the counselor and chief cook and bottle washer and all those things that are going on. And that goes pretty okay, because I love doing that. But I worry a little bit about our high school kids that are failing their classes in high school, that come into summer school and they need an alternative approach to help them pass. I'll just point out, too, that most of the kids are boys and boys of color, and that's something for us to look at in terms of achievement gap for kids. But with that said, those kids need a lot of love and care and hand-holding to help them get through the program. So I think that makes sense in what I'm saying, but I feel like it would be helpful to do that for them. And then I've been talking with Ms. Ritchie about trying to research adding a math class to summer school for credit recovery. I feel like this is a gateway class and gateway content area for kids that are trying to get into the fields that we're hoping to prepare them for, and it seems like a gap for me that we're not offering math in terms of credit recovery. And for those that may not know, the reasoning for that is it's very difficult to offer math in summer school because the math is leveled, right? They're either going to need Math 1 or they're going to need Math 2. English and history are classes we can combine, so we don't get enough kids to essentially fill the class maybe to 25, but we can combine content areas in history and English and put them all into one and compact the curriculum. You can't really do that with math. So if we're going to have a Math 1 class, it needs to be a Math 1 class. And that means even if, and Marie and I have talked a little bit about that, but I've really talked about it with Alexia in terms of how could we do that. And then if we offer more than 2 content areas and a kiddo needs two classes or 3 classes, they can't take them all, because we can't be there till 6 or 7 at night. So, I mean, there are some challenges to go through, but I think it's worth looking into. Maybe she and I felt maybe Math 1 would be a good class to offer, because that's probably one of the classes that kids are really needing to get to by the time they're a senior. And I say all this with understanding that I'm not a secondary person, so I know just enough about it to tell you what I think, but then I need other people to help me problem solve it. And then the other thing is Ms. Pope, who you may know has been the secretary the last couple of years with me, and I really feel that we need to just make a slight change in the attendance policy. It was written as students are able to have 1 excused absence and up to 3 excused absences, and I don't know why that just doesn't work for me in a 19-day summer school, that kids could get away with not being there 4 days. That's 25% of the curriculum. We're already compacting it. If they miss 25% of it, it makes me feel nervous that we're sending kids through a high school class and they haven't really gotten the content. So I would recommend that we either change it to 1 excused or up to 3, or I didn't write this in here, but even be a bit more stringent and just say 1 absence, period. The unintended consequence of that, though, is we may see a drop in the credit recovery rate. So again, I would welcome input from secondary folks to talk a little bit about what that might look like. I've seen in other districts where their attendance policy for summer school is a little bit more stringent than ours, in particular for the high school kids. I think there might have been a question about special education and attendance. That's a little bit different, and I'm happy to answer questions about that. So I think that's about it. That's my summary. I actually don't know how long I had. I hope I did all right. Okay.
did
I should have
great.
looked at that. So if I can answer any questions for you, let me know,
Okay.
and I'll do my best.
Ross?
So if someone were taking math in summer school, what would they be doing subsequent? They're going into senior year at the high school, or they're?
Yeah, go ahead.
My question is sort of more focused on, and I understand there's all sorts of complications about creating classes versus just porting a class over we're already teaching. But I'm wondering, having heard from people about things like life skills, if we could teach sort of math everyone needs and get people out of high school armed with enough math to be safe, as it were.
Right, practical math skills.
Yeah, and so it may not be math 1 so much as an integrated math you might teach to across a couple of grades that includes some
Right.
statistics, because they're
Right.
absolutely going to see that.
Right.
And rather than, have them never get to that statistics class. And I don't know how hard that would be, because I know creating a class and getting it, say, UC accredited, but maybe
Well, that particular class, as I understand it, I don't know if we offer it at Albany High. It was offered at the high school my kids went to. And often when kiddos might not have been on track for four-year programs, they would take a finance class or something like that. I don't know enough about what we offer at Albany High. I apologize, to know whether or not that's a class. It's not a UC, as far as I know, it's not a UC eligible class, however, probably a very valuable course in terms of teaching kids things like how to buy a car and how do you rent an apartment. Some of those, I think that's what you're talking about, Ross.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How do you get out and actually know how to manage a checkbook and some of those things that, right?
Right.
I don't want to get too far off track with that.
Yeah, I mean, like we teach, ideally, we're teaching people to learn how to learn. There are some fundamental life skills. I hear people saying, "Oh, I never learned that," and I
Right.
went off to college and didn't
Right.
understand student loans
Yeah.
or didn't understand my budget.
Right.
Michaela?
Very true, all true. And that type of a course could be combined in terms of the grade levels of students that are in there, whereas the others might not be as easy to do that. Did you have something you wanted to say, Michaela?
Yeah, at the high school, we have AP statistics, but you don't really learn how to, balance a checkbook or student loans or anything like those life skills that you're talking about. I know that sometimes in economics, they teach that, but I don't know if that's a mandatory part of the curriculum. So I've definitely heard that a lot as well, where students are leaving the high school and don't know how to do those basic skills.
It's an age-old problem, yeah.
Yeah, but just to answer the question of if they offer stats, they don't.
Thank you.
Audrey?
They also introduced a business management
that's
class
true.
this year, which I think is dealing with more of the checkbook
Yeah,
type stuff.
yeah. I'll follow up and talk to Ms. Ritchie about that. I don't know who will be summer school principal next year, but it's really my sincere hope that some of these things kind of continue to sustain themselves. So one of the glitches with summer school is that you sometimes have different administration each year, and it can kind of get a little choppy.
Charlie?
So of the students who passed the classes, did you feel that they mastered the material regardless of attendance? I mean, there were students who didn't pass because of
Yeah.
attendance.
Right.
Of those who did pass, were there issues with mastering the material because
Yeah.
of being in that kind of not perfect attendance, but not bad enough to fail kind of zone?
Well, I can't speak for the way other folks have sort of administrated that program, but one of the things I've done over the last couple years with teachers I've hired is be a little careful in screening who I've hired, and that I want to kind of vet what's their philosophy on helping kids to succeed, and how do they determine whether a student passes or fails, because in summer school for credit recovery, I feel like if the kid shows up, number one, I don't want them to fail, so it's our job to figure out out how to help them to succeed. And the curriculum in terms of process and delivery needs to be adjusted in a way that if they didn't pass it in the regular semester in high school, why would we teach it exactly the same way in summer school? When, let's face it, kids in high school really don't want to get up at 8 o'clock and show up for summer school. So you have to do something to engage them and make it a little bit more accessible for them. So with that said, I feel like the delivery model from the teachers was different and creative and alternative. And I had one last thought, and I'm thinking about what that was. I can't remember. I'll say it in a second. But that's kind of the big thing. Oh, I know what it was. It's that we have to be realistic about the fact that we're compacting an entire semester of curriculum into 19 days and combining them, right? So it's English 1, 2. And we didn't do 1, 2, and 3. It would either be English 1 and 2 or English 2 and 3. And that's probably not as challenging as compacting U.S. history, world history. When I think if you spoke to a secondary person teaching history, they would say, even in a regular semester, it's very hard for us to get through that much content. So I want to be honest and say that my answer is coming at it from 2 angles. So does that answer your question? Sure. Okay. Any other questions?
Other questions? Comments from the audience?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And it was my pleasure to do it. I really enjoyed it.
Kim?
Oh, you want to have a question?
Thank you. Well, it's just about your concern about the absence policy.
Right.
So you expressed several thoughts on that, and I just wonder what the next steps are going to be, because I believe that the attendance policy is set in a board policy and in an administrative regulation. So if you and the
I'm looking
other
at the person that
administrators,
will.
yeah, if you guys talk about it and determine your direction, then I think that you would need to possibly come back to the board, or maybe go directly to the board policy committee to get that.
Well, that's
modified.
good to let me know. I think if I were going to lead the process, and I'm not, I would say that I would be happy to help with that. Marie would probably be the person that would do that with me, maybe Carrie too, I don't know. And I would probably recommend that we do some research around what surrounding districts do for their summer schools and bring that as a sort of data point, because it's my opinion, having done summer school elsewhere, that, as I already spoke, that we could probably be a little bit more rigorous about that. Right, Marie? I'll defer to Marie. But I'll put it as a tickler on my calendar to talk to her about it.
Thank you.
Right now. Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now what everybody has been looking forward to, 2017-18 unaudited actuals.
This item is to receive and approve 17-18 unaudited actual financial report. And let's see if I can make this right.
Mm-hmm.
So closing of 17-18 books. Now we have actual beginning balance for 18-19, which is a current year. So the actual balance is updated and adjusted, and this adjustment will be seen in the first interim report. And all the carryovers, grant carryovers or LCAP carryovers, local carryovers will be posted for the this current year after tonight, once the board accepts the report. Okay, so let's look at the financial highlights. Let's see. So the state funds the school district based on attendance instead of the actual enrollment. So the ADA for current year was 3,543. Enrollment was 3,638. So our attendance about 97%, which is really good. However, it dropped about 80 from 16-17. And then districts are funded based on greater of prior year ADA or the current year ADA. So we were funded for prior year ADA based on prior ADA. And except for the contributions made to restrict programs of $6 million, all federal, state, and local restrict categorical programs are self-funded. And I will talk about the $60 million later on in the next slide. So general fund has two components. One is unrestricted, and the other one is restricted. So we'll look at unrestricted general fund first. So the item here we can look is, I guess, right there. This ending fund balance, we ended with $6,810,000, which is less than about $70,000 than what we projected, what we estimated. So this means that our beginning fund balance for 18-19, we have $70,000 less to start the school year, for the current school year. Then this $71,000 here is about less than 0.1% of $47 million expenditures. And we have, right, this line here, this is the state required 3% reserve that we have to show. And this assigned item of $5 million, this is assigned for our next 4 years of deficit. And some other program that assigned means that we set aside money for future planning. For future, like let's say this money include about, let's say we want to purchase, refresh some equipment, or we want to upgrade some internet. That can be assigned, or it can be, we need to assign this about $1 million something to cover next year's negative fund or net loss of future years. So that's what it assigned. And actually, the board packet has the details on page 162, but it's really small, but I can show you the details later on if you'd like. And this is restricted general fund. So restricted money can only be spent for purpose determined by grantors. So you can see there is a big differences of about 800. So this means that $1,150,000 is considered of other restricted grants, like CA Clean Energy or SELPA or other lotteries, and even partial tax are one of these restricted general fund.
Could I just stop a minute and just make sure I understand that what you're saying there, I think, is that we didn't estimate wrong. We simply didn't spend that money, and it's there waiting for us and ready to be spent in the coming year?
Correct.
Thank you.
For example, let's say Clean Energy Fund. We received about $700,000, and we only spent about $200,000. So now we still have $500,000 that we have to spend in coming year, which is this current year. And the grant term is that we have to spend that money by 18-19. Not spend, but the contract has to be in place. Right? So something like that. That's what, and then also I know the lottery fund of $63,000. It's because for textbooks. So we are planning to have a new textbooks maybe in future years, but it didn't happen this current year or 17-18. Any other questions? And this is the contributions to restrict programs, and this is what I earlier mentioned, about $6 million. So special ed, about $4.3 million from the general fund, unrestricted, and the ongoing maintenance, about 1.5, and this is budgeted amount when we budgeted for 17-18 a year ago. So that's total 6.1.
Ross?
And so there are monies that are allocated to us for special education.
Right.
This is what we, in addition, move from the general fund to add to the monies that were sort of earmarked for special ed in order to fully fund all of the things we're doing for special ed.
Correct.
So this number, 4.3 million, is just what's transferred from the general fund in addition to that other monies, which isn't anywhere near that much, right? It's like 1 to 2 million, somewhere in that range?
Correct. That is correct.
Now, I think this doesn't reflect, I think both the cafeteria and the pool were running in the red this year, but they had savings to cover it, so it didn't come out of here. But if that continued long-term, that would start coming out of the general fund as well.
That's correct. That's correct. And I wanted to just point that out, the ongoing maintenance account. So, well, let's see. If I can look at the next slide. So there are other funds that district has. There is another one called Deferred Maintenance Fund. So the difference of the ongoing maintenance and deferred maintenance is the ongoing maintenance for the maintenance of the school buildings. For example, the salaries for custodians and maintenance team are budgeted here and expensed, and also custodial supplies, maintenance supplies, school signs, they got new signs, or like pest control, landscaping. Those are ongoing maintenance account. And this one, deferred maintenance fund, is not required from the state anymore. However, in the past, and currently last year, district used this fund for the larger maintenance. For example, such as Ocean View gas line leak, it costs about $53,000. And also the high school gym flooring costs about $70,000. So the district in the past, we put the larger maintenance items in this deferred maintenance fund, and the smaller items into that ongoing maintenance account. So there are little differences that we wanted to keep. However, this is not required by the state. And I can move on to, would you like to explain the fund, or would you want me to move on to the next one? Any questions?
We'll move on.
Okay, so this is the fund summary for all other funds, other than general fund. SERPA, the first one you will see zero because this is a pass-through account, like fund, meaning that we receive the revenue and we distribute this to other districts, like Emeryville School District and Alameda, or even Piedmont, some other member school districts.
So I might be able to also add to that, the SELPA board, which consists of our superintendents from each of the 5 districts in the unit. We meet regularly and we manage the SELPA budget.
Okay. So now the final steps for 17-18. This report will be submitted to the County of Ed and also to the state and district auditors. The auditor is coming to our district in October and audit actuals, and we'll have the report presented in January board meeting. And that's it.
Questions? Charlie?
So I noticed that when you talked about enrollment, we did have several years of declining enrollment, and I believe I've seen some recent reports from the district about this year's enrollment, which looks like our numbers are coming back up again, and so it may be that the trough will have been 2017-18. I don't know if staff wants to comment on the numbers for this year's enrollment.
I can give you the most updated numbers that I have is that right now the total enrollment for 18-19, excuse me, is 3,703, and that is an increase of 65 students from last year.
How many inter-district transfers have we accepted this year?
New inter-district transfers, we've accepted 8. Some of them are employees because they have the first priority. But we had those who were currently on inter-district transfers that we renew, about 415, I believe.
Okay, so the increasing enrollment isn't just due to having accepted a whole bunch of kids from out of district?
That is correct. It's people moving into Albany and enrolling their children as well.
Great. Ross?
And possibly students losing their other schools. Apparently Tahia Day School has closed and St. Jerome's closed last year. So we could see some sort of collapsing back towards the public schools.
Other questions? I have a question. A lot of the budget discussion this year is around our structural deficit. And the numbers we've seen in the summary slides, it's not obvious where that was over this past year, how much the deficit was and where it shows up. Can you find that in some of your tables and show us what actually happened this last year?
Yes, however, I don't think I have. Right. I don't have it. Right. So I can actually, let's see, maybe I can pull something.
Yeah. Actually, I could offer some numbers for you, and it's in the detail. Of
course.
We don't want to go through all those pages, but I looked at that. So in the estimated actuals, our kind of net.
Can you give us a page?
Well, I don't know what the page is. I'm just remembering it. I'll flip through while I'm talking here,
Right.
and then I'll be able to give it to you. But in our estimated actuals, we had previously thought we would be, there would be a net decrease in our fund balance of 1.3 million. It actually turned out to be 600,000.
More. In addition, correct?
No, it's less. And I got excited about this at first until I realized the reason that there was a difference is simply because we didn't spend $800,000 of restricted funding that we thought we were going to spend last year. So there's no difference really in the structural
Right.
deficit compared to where we thought we were when we adopted the budget in June. It's showing up here in the unaudited actuals as deficit spending of $600,000 compared to 1.3 million, but there are restricted funds that account for that difference.
So in summary, I can say the only difference from June, when we had an adopted budget for 18-19, the difference you will see is this 71,000.
In the
Bottom line.
in the unrestricted.
Unrestricted, correct.
Yeah.
Because restrict money is something that we cannot control.
Yeah, but when you look at the total of restricted plus
Right.
unrestricted, sort of the
That is
bottom
correct.
line, it looks like we're doing better
Right.
here compared to what we saw in June, but it's simply because we haven't spent some of the money that we were planning to spend, and we are going to spend that because it's restricted money.
Correct.
And the assigned $5 million, that is assigned to cover
Future years net loss.
future year's net loss, which would be spending down our
Correct.
reserve.
Correct. For example, next year we are projecting that we will have about 2 million net loss, so that 5 million will be 3.2 million. And the following year is going to be another, with the 2.5 budget cut, about another 500,000, so it's going to be less 500,000. So there will be, we will spend all this 5 million in next 3-4 years.
But that's assuming that we've already made a $2.5 million
Yes.
cut in the budget,
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
which we have not done yet.
Correct.
Okay.
That's right.
All right. Other questions, Kim?
Because it is very hard with these financial reports to figure out the kind of things that Paul was just asking about, I wonder when we're going to get a report back to the board that focuses on exactly those questions. I'm not asking for it urgently. Is this going to happen when we get the December report, or are we planning an intermediary step?
So since my plan is that we only have $70,000 difference in unrestricted general fund, Our adopted budget that we just adopted in June is still good to go, but I will have those updated numbers and chart and things for Budget Advisory Committee, which is in 2 weeks. So I will have something more of bigger picture, where we stand, and how about the future years. So I will have something for you in 2 weeks.
And because the Budget Advisory Committee, excuse me, is it's a board-appointed committee and everything's agendized, whatever the backup documents we have are public documents, and we'll also have a place on our website where we can put information on what's happened in the Budget Advisory Committee on that part of the website.
Did we have any questions or comments from the audience?
I have a question. Can you clarify about the reserve again? So for the last couple of years, it's been really confusing to understand if we're operating under the 9% or the 3%. I heard you say 3% tonight, but in the last couple of years, again, we've had statistics that says we're managing a 9%, even though the state only requires a 3%. Some of us advocated for moving downward to only the requirement in order to manage our deficit. So I'd just like to hear from you.
Right. So state requires 3%. However, our board policy is 9%. And the 9% is critical because 100% divided by 12 months is about 9%. That means 9% means that when we have 9% reserve, that covers district's expenditures for 1 month. So all of a sudden things go really bad, we still have 9%, we can pay all our expenditures, salaries and everything for 1 month. That's what the 9% represent.
Right, I understand that, but are we operating under keeping a 9% or under a 3%?
Currently, we do have a 9% when you look at this assigned because that is also fund balance. However, we are not going to have a 9% in next 3 years because we will have net deficit, like net loss. This coming year, not coming year, we are already in 18-19, we are expecting 2 million net loss. That means we are not going to have 9% already. And the following year, so what I have with this 2.5 cut, in 3 years, 4 years, we are going to have a zero fund balance with the 2.5 cut.
So looking at these numbers right here, so in the middle column, the 1.412 million is 3%.
Correct.
That is our maintaining our 3%.
Correct.
And if we were to maintain 9%, we'd need another 2.8 million. And that's currently in that 5.269 million
Correct.
there, but we're spending it down.
Right.
And the anticipation is over these years, it'll all go away.
Correct.
And ideally,
We can't do that.
all that 5.269 could go away because you still have that 1.412 in reserve. But we're coming down fast, and this assumes a $2.5 million cut carried through from next year on. So think of that 5.269 as, here's our above the 3% cushion, but it's shrinking rapidly.
Correct.
Right, but it's also important to remember that that 3% is not a floor. When you hit that 3%, if you're still overspending, you go right through it, and then the state takes control of the district because you don't have your 3% reserve.
Right, I understand that. So I'm wondering if with a $2.5 million cut, and we run it down to zero within a relatively short period of time, we're really not talking about 2.5 million.
Exactly. We're talking more. Of course, we're hoping we don't have to do it all in cuts. We're hoping that we can pass a parcel tax and cushion it somehow.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments or questions?
Might also just add the observation that we have one potential new revenue source this year. That's increased enrollment. With 65 students, that represents a sizable influx of new monies.
Yes, it does. Of course, there's some additional hiring that tends to go with that, so it tends to offset
But
it.
it will be a net gain.
Good. Other comments, questions? I'd like to thank you. This is your first big report for us, and it was great. Thank you for coming and being so well prepared, and
I think.
looking forward to the next one.
So, are you ready for a motion?
We do need to approve this.
Or accept it, right?
Or accept it.
I think
The board needs to
we
accept
need
it.
to accept it.
Yes.
right?
We
Actually,
need to-
does the board need to approve, Jackie?
Receive
Is it
and
an approval?
approve the recommendation is to receive and approve.
Okay. So I move that we receive and approve. We have received. So I move we approve this report.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Good. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so we have to appoint a budget advisory committee, and we actually have at least one more person applying to be on it than we have slots, so we actually have to decide something.
That is correct. So the purpose of this item is for the board to appoint the Albany Unified School District Budget Advisory Committee.
Jacob?
Yeah, just real quickly, I know we all looked at this. I'm very happy that we have 3 parents who are interested, and there's only 2 spots. The committee is very small as it is, and I was proposing that we just have all 3 of them on, if that's possible. You know, instead of us having to try to decide 2 out of 3 really highly qualified candidates who are willing to put in the time. They're from different grade levels and, you know, kind of spread out. And, you know, if we had a huge committee, adding another 4 or 5 to me would be too much. But it's a small committee, so I'm just suggesting that.
Okay, Charlie?
So I had the same reaction. Why would we want to lose expertise when we have it? And I would support that suggestion. If we're not able to do that, the alternative I would propose would be that we designate one of the parents as an alternate who would attend meetings, just like juries have alternates, but would not actually be a voting member if they get to that, unless one of the 2 primary members couldn't continue. So either way, I could go either way, but I think what we were originally looking for was to have parents from all the grade span levels involved. And when I looked at who had applied, I noticed that Jessica Cross is the only one with older children. Hers are 5th grade and 8th grade. And then we have 2 people who have younger children, but they're different age groupings. I think one was preschool and 2nd grade. The other was 1st grade and 5th grade, if I remember right. So it does actually span, I mean, we have 3 parents spanning everything from preschool to the last year of middle school.
Okay. Would you care to comment on the size of the committee and what you prefer to do?
I think adding a 3rd parent on there would be fine because it still keeps the committee at 7, and I would be happy to take the board's suggestion on that.
Anyone else want to weigh in on this? Kim?
I had the same ideas in my notes. I think we need to not lose expertise. I think these are all excellent candidates, and I could support either the idea of just having 3 parents on the committee or the alternate that Charlie suggested. But anyhow, I think we need to give them a chance to participate. So glad that they applied. These are they're going to bring a lot of expertise to our committee, and I think it will improve our results.
Great. So let's see. I guess we should go for a consensus on the size of the committee. Since we already approved the makeup of the committee in another meeting, we would need, tonight is just the appointment of the committee. So I think the only way we can not bring this back and re-vote on it would be to have one of them appointed as an alternate. Otherwise, we would have to bring back onto the agenda the makeup of the committee and reapprove the size of the committee.
It's the only way we can.
I think, if that's what we formally did before.
It is what you.
You're right, but
It is what you formally did, and actually, having the member of the committee, whether the committee member is an alternate or sort of an official voting member, to me, the important piece is to have all of the representatives here be able to provide their information, expertise, ask questions, and to help us through this process.
My guess is that if one of them is officially an alternate, it won't really make any difference, that the committee will probably be doing things by consensus rather than by a vote, and the alternate can participate in the meeting and will be treated like any other member. Charlie?
Well, I wonder if we could just appoint one person as an alternate until such time as we reconfigure the committee, and we could just put that on the consent calendar for next time, and then they would automatically become a full member? I mean, does that work?
Yeah, we could do that, yeah. Or we could make it a shared appointment, that a joint appointment, you know, and then make it official at the next meeting.
I think if I bring this back as a consent item, then in all fairness, the board would then potentially could have the other category members ask for more members as well. I like the shared appointment idea, and I agree with you. My goal is always for us to come to consensus.
Did you want to say something? Sorry, she just couldn't sit. Oh, it's okay. Those are not very comfortable chairs.
Can we ask the candidate who's here to speak to this point? Joseph, would you like to?
Thanks for having me speak. It's a hard decision in a sense that it's following the policies and the routine, but in my board experience, it's less strict, so we can change things pretty flexibly. For me, if in the end of the day you're going to approve all three, then I won't be offended. I don't mind being the alternate until it gets approved. If it is you're worried about offending someone, I'm fine. I just want to help contribute, and being able to work with people on that committee and have access to the data to do analysis and make recommendations. That's perfectly fine with me.
Great, thank you. Jacob?
thank you so much. I was reading all three of them, and all of you seem very qualified, and I was so happy that you guys wanted to volunteer, and I didn't want to be put in the position of having to say who were going to be the two official ones and the alternate, so thank you so much.
Okay, so we still, this is just a formality, but there's two positions for parents, so one of them will be one position and then two will share the other. Since two of them have primary school kids and one has secondary, it seems like the two with the primary would be the shared appointment. Does that make sense?
It does.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to comment or question? If not, I think we have just one appointee for each slot with the one shared position, so we can just vote to approve it. Is that what we're voting on? It's
To appoint the AUSD Budget Advisory Committee.
to approve the members or to appoint the members who have been proposed?
Yeah, just to appoint the members, I think. But could we clarify then, are we actually going to then change the composition of the committee or just stick with what we have here as a shared position?
I think, yes, that's a good question. I got the impression from what the superintendent said she'd rather just not open it up again for more discussion, but just say we've made our decision on the size and composition of the committee and just have one shared position. Michaela?
Would a shared position look like the same thing as changing the composition of the committee? Okay.
Not exactly.
Okay.
I think it does.
The two together would have one vote. If it
Okay.
came to
Okay,
a
so
vote.
that's the difference. The only difference is that there's still just one vote if
Two
they,
votes total.
yeah, if they wind up voting. Yeah,
My guess is they won't be voting.
yeah.
So I move that we accept these appointments to the Budget Advisory Committee with accepting Jessica Cross as one of the parents and accepting Joseph View and Ben Wallace as sharing the other parent position.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That brings us to agenda items and matters introduced by the board. Do we have any agenda items to add? Audrey?
I had an update last time. We talked about the behavior matrix, and Michaela and I met with Ms. Ritchie and Mr. Pratt after school today, and we were able to get everything that we wanted on
Thank you.
approved. And I had a lot. Well, not
Negotiation
they had,
skills.
They had answers for all of our concerns.
Okay.
Just to add on to that, we weren't able to get everything that we wanted on the behavior matrix, but as it is a living document, I'm sure that it'll be an ongoing discussion about what consequences for different offenses will look like, and so we were able to come to agreement about all of the consequences that are stated on the matrix.
Thank you. Perfect. Ross?
So three things. So first, Charlie and I and some other candidates were at a meeting, Albany Democratic Club, for the school board election, but we also were there to watch the city council candidates. And somebody in the audience submitted a question about ways in which the city and district could better collaborate. And one of the responses, or maybe several of the council members responded that having a joint district council meeting would be a great idea, more sooner than later. Somewhat surprising to me, given previous interactions. And so I'd really like to see something in the order of it, and shooting for something like an annual meeting. I mean, it doesn't have to be this board. It could be soon after the new board. It might be, well, there certainly will be probably turnover in leadership at the city council. Might be best to schedule at the end of this calendar year or start of the next one. But I think we should work to try to have some sort of meeting of the minds. Secondly, and kind of handing some issues over to the student board members, I got a constituent concern about her kid's class and the practice of having a bathroom log where everyone had to sign out to go to the bathroom. They were essentially logging people's bladders. I've spoken in the past about not liking to see bathroom passes used in lieu of extra credit, et cetera, making someone's letter grade contingent on whether or not they were as healthy as the person next to them. I think it's a pretty bad idea, but I'd love to pass to the student board members looking at issues of time and space at the school. Is passing period long enough? Making it longer and a little longer day, would that change people's lives significantly? I know I hear things like talking with teachers before or after class is important, but we compress time down a lot. And then we talked about school start time. We should be thinking about an 8:30 start time, and you guys should absolutely be talking with fellow students about what will happen as a result of an 8:30 start time. But why do we have finals starting at 8:10? Okay, the finals days go from when? 8:10 till 12:30?
12:30.
Why don't they go from 10 until 2:30 or 10 to 3? Why do we have finals? That's one huge thing under our control. We can't, do what, if the SAT subject tests given by College Board have to be at dawn 30, we don't have to start our finals before mid-morning. So why do we live with we'll start when school normally starts and then we'll end because it's only 3 hours, that sort of a thing. So I'd love to have you all take up the issue of time and space at the school. Is there, after school, are there places to meet? Is there time to meet? Is there supervision so we can have a club or a non-club meeting? Those sorts of issues. So if you'd love to bring those things. And then lastly, I mentioned this in the debates, foreign language. We don't take it on formally until 7th grade. But there are tools out there, I'm using Duolingo to learn Irish. I'd love to have us raise as an issue, and it doesn't have to be anytime soon, but foreign language in the schools and ways to push it into the curriculum or to supplement the curriculum or to revisit why we wait until kids' brains are pretty well set before introducing them to something that works really well at age 2.
Okay, is that a formal request for an agenda item?
I'd like to have foreign language, sure, as an agenda item.
Okay, I'll second it. Jacob?
Yeah, I wasn't sure when the appropriate time was to bring this up, but Ross had mentioned something about the bathroom pass and certain things that are happening. I had heard about this last year, and I was having lunch with one of my friends a couple weeks ago, and something I heard really disturbed me, and I just want to maybe get a little clarification if they can let me know. But 2 people I know well, and I've heard it from other people, that their children are failing PE because they can't run a mile under a certain amount of time. And that 70% of the grade is attached to being able to run a mile at a certain time. And that, I don't know how that can, I'm hoping that's not true, because if you're running a mile at whatever time and you can show improvement, that is important to me. I mean, I don't know if the cutoff is 10 minutes or whatever, but can we please research this? Because to me, if you are setting 10 minutes and someone is trying as hard as they can and they're training and they're not hitting that 10 minutes and they're failing PE, it should not be happening. So I'm not saying this is what is happening. I'm just reporting what I've heard from people that I know
Audrey?
well.
Yeah, you're correct.
I'm correct?
Yes. I don't know if it's a 70% exactly, but we talked about this in our world history class, and it was brought up by another student, and it's definitely a concern. I think the reason they do it is because at the end of freshman year, which is the one required year you have to take PE, you take the California fitness test, and in that, they're trying to prepare you for the mile to pass the time and pass the fitness test, so then you don't have to take it another year. But I think it should be a lot more based on improvement, and I think the start limit at the beginning of the year, you have to get under 11:30, and it's a minute less for boys. But it's definitely way too big of a chunk of a grade, and Michaela and I can definitely look into that more.
Thank you so much, and if we can try to find a way to solve this as soon as possible,
Yeah,
so this doesn't happen to another child, it's not.
I'll have my staff work with the principal at the high school to look into what the specifics are of this item. And I could either, if the board wishes, I could either do it in a Friday update, or we could do it as a staff report if need be.
If done as a staff report, could we have the new athletic director, whom we've not formally met, give that report?
Astrid?
All right, but
In addition to what you were talking about in PE, I've seen a lot of other schools, such as Berkeley, I believe El Cerrito may do it, where they have their students, rather than completing a certain number of years of PE, they can take a school sport and have that sign off as PE. They can take dance like what we do at our school. But the ratio of time dance to sports based on fulfilling a PE credit is completely irrational. And so there's been a lot of talk at the high school of trying to change some of the requirements for PE, not getting rid of them, because I think it is very important, and a lot of people think that it's very important, but rather being able to substitute a sport or a certain number of hours at a gym each week for PE requirements. And I know that a lot of other schools have enacted that as well.
Okay, I'll just make one quick comment, and then Jacob and Kim. The Instructional Improvement Council, the IIC at the high school, is the place to start with discussions about something like that. Jacob?
Yeah, my son plays football for the Berkeley Junior Jackets, and I was at a practice a couple weeks ago, and it was at B Tech, which is on Martin Luther King and Derby, and on the telephone pole there was a flyer saying that kids can do something similar to what she was saying. It was some kind of rowing crew or whatever, and it said that they could be transferred over for PE units, so dancing or rowing or whatever. I mean, if we can try to make it where there's more options would be.
Okay, Kim and then Michaela.
It is possible at the high school to substitute team sports for a year of PE. I believe that all of the students required to take freshman PE, but then you can, if you participate in a team sport for 4 seasons, then that second year of PE is waived.
And that's not including freshman year sports. So it's 4 years of sports, not including freshman year.
Okay, yeah, you're right. So
It's 4 seasons, it's not
4 series.
4 seasons.
There are actually 3 seasons a year.
There's 3 seasons of sport in a year. So if you so after your freshman year, and if you participate in sports your freshman year, those seasons don't count. But if you then are on a team for 4 seasons, that second year of PE is waived. So they are doing that now. I don't think that they're accepting off-campus sport participation. And there are a few students that are high-level athletes in sports that we don't offer, like if you're a gymnast or something that's spending every single day at the gym, there is not a transfer facility for that to the high school. So you'd still have to take PE.
Okay, so I just need to comment that this is not on the agenda, so we shouldn't really be discussing it at this point. We can certainly ask that it be put on the agenda to talk about.
Could I make a suggestion?
Beyond that, we can't really have the discussion now.
Can I make a suggestion? So for the item that was specifically asked about running the mile in under 10 minutes, that I think staff can get to the board and the student board members in a Friday update. Okay? So you get more of an immediate answer on that particular one. I think given this discussion, this would be a really good staff report to talk about just, PE and sports. What I would request is that when I agendize this, if you have questions, send them to me so that I can have staff prepare a really good presentation. I don't want staff to present something and then you say, but you didn't address certain things.
Okay, Charlie?
So in that presentation and discussion about PE, I have a request, and that is we may have an opportunity when we house Ocean View Elementary students at our as yet unbuilt high school annex for elementary students, 4th and 5th graders, to take swimming lessons as part of their PE program.
Oh, wow.
So could we talk about that as part of the agenda or part of that discussion?
They don't have swimming as part of PE?
Not at elementary. They used to. Elementary used to. Elementary used to. But what an opportunity. So maybe we could talk about that.
Okay.
A different agenda item that's probably already planned, but I just want to mention it, is our enrollment report for this year. Are we going to see that item in October?
Yes, that is agendized.
Thank you.
Well, it's on the governance calendar.
Okay.
Jacob?
Just one last one. I was mentioned earlier with the whole thing running the mile. I just wanted to say this to my friend because it was funny. We were having lunch, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. You should bring it to the board. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm talking to a board member. So I just wanted to let him know that I brought it to the board. and hopefully we can get some action on it.
Thanks. We have a board retreat this Saturday. Yes?
Yes, from 1 to 4 at the Albany Middle School Library.
Okay, and that is an open meeting, so anybody who wants to attend is welcome. With that, we are adjourned. 10 minutes early.